are these people?
Speaking of help, pre-K workers take the fight to Mayor Adams. Um,
Playing
but
to your co-host.
I know, right? Just for the people at home, you teach pre-K, yes?
Correct.
Okay. And you get stuff thrown at your head, and you gotta dip, duck, and dive things, and you know,
Those of you who are not on Twitter, I posted this last week, and you probably can't see it now, but at least here. But like, I got a cut on the.
oh, you can a little bit.
I can. Yeah,
Yeah.
here. Got a cut here from a student.
Hey man, kids got good elbows. You taught him. You taught him well.
He has good elbows and a good arm. I'll say that. He needs to go into either baseball or some discus.
Yeah, the discus.
Because essentially that's what he threw at me in order to get this cut.
Nice.
So, but I wouldn't change my job for the world, though I love it. But but what's going on from
who is this? Is from Labor Notes, I think, is who I had it from.
Yes.
So New York pre-K workers fight for their jobs in spite of their union, and that's the big deal I wanted to mention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your union says you can't strike, yes?
Yeah. Well, my district says I
district says, right. So
yes.
Mayor Eric Adams is slowly dismantling free pre-K, the signature program of his predecessor. Go ahead.
No, I said, oh God, but keep going.
Yeah. By layoffs and by leaving sites unpaid for months. Again, months. These accessed instructional coordinators and social workers are fighting back. So just days before school started last fall, 400 early childhood education workers in New York City were told they were being accessed. What the fuck does that mean?
What?
Like, what do you know what that means? What is accessed?
They were fired.
Like,
because
sure,
it's the idea of like there's too many of them.
Yeah.
But I argue it's New York.
Yes.
So there needs to be a lot, and I need to, and I probably should look into this a little bit more, but at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to: money. This is about money, because early childhood is expensive because they're young. The older you get, the less money, like, per student that a public school would have to take on. But especially like if you're talking about, like, let's say a daycare, like, early childhood costs a lot.
Yeah.
But I would make the argument is if they are the most impressionable years of your life, I would think, well, this has been proven, if you focus on the early grades, you're not as likely to get into a lot of the issues that students get when they're older. But of course, we're trying to be cheap in this country. And so there isn't necessarily that investment, in early childhood. And many of these early childcare workers are working, especially if you're working in a daycare, they make no money.
Yeah.
Like, that's why for me, like, it's more profitable to be at a public school. Because at least then I'd be able to get paid, in terms of like what my district offers. If you're in a childcare, whether public or private, they're not going to make that much.
Yeah.
So it's usually like, and I think we've talked about this, a couple of streams ago, like typically it's usually way below minimum wage. Well, not even living wage, I should say. Sometimes it could be below minimum wage.
This whole accessed, like, it sounds like he got a priest in, like,
yeah.
The workers sprang into action, and in January, they want a short-term reinstatement, but they're still fighting for long-term job stability as the administration of Mayor Eric Adams slowly dismantles his predecessor, Bill de Blasio's signature program, universal pre-K. So we talked about that when it happened too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we did.
Um, so Eric Adams, who we've covered frequently before as well, trying to fuck the crumb that we got.
Right.
So, and not only are they fighting the city, they've also had to fight their union, the United Federation of Teachers, everyone's favorite terrible union. With
Hmm.
180,000 members, the UFT is the largest teachers union in the country and a powerful force in city politics. But members can tell you the union is a slumbering giant where activism is suppressed.
Does not surprise me at all.
No, not a surprise at all. The workers on the chopping block were instructional coordinators who support teachers with developmentally appropriate curriculum and social workers who assist students with specific behavior needs and collaborate with families. Many of these workers support 10 or more school sites. So the city tried to cut all instructional coordinators and social workers across public charter and private schools that receive public funding, all without offering any support to replace them. Accessing is
So
an
basically,
go ahead.
so basically, they're getting rid of all the supports and throwing
Yes.
it all. I initially, like, I thought it was just teachers. So basically, they're giving away. They're cutting the
Mm-hmm.
support systems to support the teachers and basically throwing
Well,
all
and
the
keep
work
in
on the
mind,
teacher.
even today in our previous story, we talked about how they're ending Medicaid, that kind of stuff. They're ending,
Right.
you know. So
Tips.
for
Yep.
this, who needs pre-K the most? Do you think it's the kids or the parents who need somewhere where their child to be for 8 hours?
Well, not only that, but it's the idea of like which demographics need universal pre-K the
Yes,
most.
yes, 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 yes. Because
That's the thing.
the ones that need a
Because
place for their children to go so that they have childcare, so that both parents can go work to afford everything else that child needs and they need to survive in a
right.
world where we know cost of living, especially in New York, is extremely high.
And
So,
I used to do this, like for
yeah.
all intents and purposes, my many jobs in the field. Essentially, I was a social worker, and I had to support families. I had to help families get vouchers in order for them to afford to pay. Well, it was free for them because they
Right.
were homeless.
Yes.
So I had to get vouchers from the state to ensure that their child can go to school. So the idea that you're cutting like a program like that off from people in New York City, you know, that's disastrous, especially among low income families
Yeah.
who need that care.
So, and it's
So
not, they're not even just they're just making it way hard. So, accessing is an on ramp to firing. Workers lose their positions, forcing them to apply to other positions, wait in the reserve system to be assigned each day to any site, or leave the school system altogether. So that's you have to be anywhere in New York suddenly. Like, is that what that means? You're on call
that's yeah,
now
they're on call.
for the entirety of
And
New York for children they don't know, they've never worked with. Like,
right. Yeah. And
Jesus
given
Christ.
but given transportation, given like it could be depending where in the city they are, it could be very hard to travel, like to and from, especially if you're taking public transportation. It can take upwards of an hour or more just to get between
Yeah.
boroughs,
And that's if you have
so
transportation,
well,
which, like,
and even if you're driving, it's still going to be maddening, but that's all at the expense of the
so
social staff,
here's
the support staff of these schools.
here's how they went about it. So, frustrated with unanswered pleas to the union and the city, the accessed workers started organizing themselves. They found support from a rank and file caucus, the movement of rank and file educators. So that's how they're doing it. They're getting around their union by essentially reorganizing.
Organizing themselves, right?
Yes. So they met by the hundreds each day at noon on Zoom, trying to figure out how to stop the slow walk firings. What does that sound like, Care Bear?
Sounds like They're looking to strike.
Yeah, I
Or at least
mean,
protest.
it
So,
it.
and
Where's this at?
but to me, it's the very idea of the union wasn't supporting them. And I've
Yep.
said this, even like with my own union, like I felt like they did everything not protest in a way that would challenge our mayor, given that last year she was up for re-election and we haven't had a contract up until that point. We just got our contract renewed, but we have to go in talks for it again in the fall. So
I mean, to me, sounds like
unity doesn't represent what you're against. It represents what you are for.
that's what it sounds like.
there you go.
These motherfuckers
That's
found
exactly
an issue. They knew that issue was a big deal. They organized over that issue. So, after a rally, the Department of Education sent them an email telling them to return to their sites until further notice. So they were back on the job, but it was impossible to do long-term planning since they never knew if they'd still have their jobs the next day. The workers continued to reach out to their union, the UFT, which refused to meet with them. They blasted elected officials with emails and phone calls to inform them of the crisis, and they teamed up with the leaders of early childhood sites that had not been paid since the Adams administration came to power in January 2022. So,
well over a year they haven't got paid.
Literally, the site hasn't been paid, not just like individuals. Like that's a pre-K not being paid. So, yeah. Claiming it had inherited a messy system.
That's no excuse.
No fucking excuse.
No fucking, and that's the same thing in DCPS that they're saying, in terms of the back pay that we receive. Oh, it's going to take time because
the system we made is so terrible. Yeah.
Right. Like, we like most people get their checks directly through their bank account.
Yeah.
Figure it out. It shouldn't take that long, honestly. You have our information.
So the admin left sites waiting months for payments owed. Many site leaders had to take out personal loans.
Jesus Christ.
To continue their work. Loans. Personal loans. That means they fucking mortgaged their house. Or whatever they were like. Holy shit.
I don't understand. And this is kind of the cop-out that I have with early childhood in general, because there's so many policymakers who know better and say, early childhood education is extremely important. We need to invest in it, blah, 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 blah. We need teachers who are qualified to do all of this, But they don't put in the investment.
No.
Never do. And it's a calling to do this. As I said, I got hit at. I got injured on the job. And it's like,
where the fuck's AOC at?
She'll argue this is not, well.
Bro, this is your
probably. Well, no, not even that. Where's Jamal Bowman? He's a teacher.
We're both of them. Both of them.
No. AOC, no.
No, I know, but I'm saying they're both at, like, AOC's Bronx, like, Brooklyn.
AOC, right.
Like, so, yeah, I mean, who else is repping New York? Like, I'm sure people will tell us in chat.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Right.
I mean,
like
Torres.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I know off the top of my head. Like,
and they're not saying anything. And it's because it's Eric Adams. That's why they're not saying anything. It's
right.
Yeah.
But God forbid if it were
Republican, they'd be all over this.
God forbid.
And it's not, they don't, they're doing this quietly. They're like, this is like quiet firing to pre-K workers. They had to take out personal loans. Like,
what the fuck?
Like, These actions are the city's ways of defunding and dismantling early childhood education for New York, making it impossible for sites to function, so that many have shuttered or are closed to insolvency. Meanwhile, the city's bolstering the police budget by $5.5 billion with a B. Billion. While cutting library and K-12 school budgets significantly.
Yeah.
So, and this is education across the board, not just pre-K.
This is happening. It's happening in my district. Like, we're getting cuts. We're getting less funding.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this is public education for you folks.
Teachers Union of America is in the pocket of the Democratic Party. No Democrat will fight them. With them blessed, they don't get donation from Teachers Union. Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah. So that's why. Yeah. So that's a lot of that's a huge reason why a lot of these unions are basically.
So watch this fucking anti-organizing shit. So reacting to the organizing. City Council called a hearing that put early childhood education deputy chancellor Dr. Kara Ahmed and her team under fire. So they pushed it to them.
Good.
Right? Workers, this is workers, site directors, and members of the Moore Caucus gave powerful testimony. The next day, Dr. Ahmad's top financial person left the department.
Good.
Sure. The same month, instructional coordinators and social workers wrote an open letter to the UFT and the American Federation of Teachers, the National Teachers Union, about their union's complete failure to support them. AFT Randy Weingarten responded in a private email. It was only after this pressure that the UFT finally hopped on board.
So hold on. So Randy like we've talked about this chick before. She is no advocate. She is no advocate. She's another Democratic show. So the fact that she didn't do this, like, she's all about Ukraine. She went over to Ukraine to support the teachers over there, and that was a public issue.
Yeah.
But you can be an advocate for New York teachers, like in the same way. Like, what the fuck?
And here's where I'm upset. The workers are planning to hold a rally in November, inviting media and elected officials. The UFT offered to have President Michael Mulgrew speak, and the workers said yes, because where Mulgrew goes, the media goes. Bullshit! Like, the media is following, like, Lady Gaga, not Mulgrew, who sounds like the worst Harry Potter character. Like, what? Like, instructional coordinators and social workers have been asking the UFT to conduct a union-wide vote of no confidence in Dr. Ahmed, and the union obliged. The workers put in long hours drafting the language of the vote with the UFT, and it went out to the entire union. None of this would have happened if these workers and teachers didn't reorganize themselves.
Right.
That's what happened. So, like, keep that in mind. That none of this good would have happened without exactly what this organization didn't want to happen happened. So, workers got speakers together and prepared them. They can continue to face tension with the union over who would control the rally. Mulgrew ended up not showing.
That sounds familiar in this space.
Yup. But Mulgrew ended up not showing, but other UFT leaders were present, and overall workers felt the rally was impactful because of the turnout and media coverage. So Mulgrew didn't show up, but the media did. How's that work?
And this is, again,
learn you something. Learn you something. Learn you something.
It's the idea of not winning. It's the idea to force mainstream media to cover it, but have it, as we say on, we should make this a shirt. Seize the
means of
seize
production.
control. No, not seize. Well, not that, but like seize control of the narrative.
Yeah.
Like you
Carpe
have
narrative.
to flip things in a way where you're able to control it and have your voices heard, that you're able to share what your grievances on your terms. And that's exactly what they did here.
In January, workers scored a big win. They got noticed and their positions will be secured for the rest of the 22-23 school year. Also, the Department of Education would have learning walks where Dr. Ahmed and other leaders would tour school sites with early childhood workers and learn about their work. These felt like concrete next steps to long-term stability. This is all fucking...
I have a problem with this.
Oh, I know.
I have a huge...
Because they're just there for like free coffee that day, and like
no, but the fact that this shouldn't, I get the idea of learning walks, but that, because I do it at my school, but the idea of like having a chancellor going in technically, and we have to look her up to see what her credentials are.
Yeah,
but a chancellor for a department for early childhood should not have to do that.
Yeah, that should be. It shouldn't have to be told to do that, for one.
Right.
Like,
but
she should just be invested in all of the schools all of the time.
Right. But then the idea is like, oh, I've never done this before, which again, even in that is kind of messed up.
Yes.
Like, you should know the issues within your schools and be able to advocate for them.
Well, it's also glad handing. It's literally that too. It's, I'm coming to show up and shake your hand, and then I'm not talking to you after that. I mean, that's literally what they're saying here. The workers wanted to debrief with DOE leadership after the learning walks, but the UFT restricted the meeting to union leaders only.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. DOE officials are now telling us how much they also value you. They assured members in a letter afterwards. It's the result of the vote of no confidence was also never publicized. After many asks, the UFT blamed members, of course they did, saying not enough people had voted, and refused to release the numbers to anyone.
Hashtag release the numbers.
Yeah, like what? So, new year, same limbo. Now schools are beginning to plan for next year. Instructional coordinators and social workers have no clue what to expect. In that open letter they sent to UFT leaders this week, signed by 89 people signed this letter. How many people just voted in that thing that you said weren't enough? Like, they're demanding to be at the negotiating table for their jobs, or at least to know what the union is doing on their behalf. Workers went to union headquarters on April 3rd for an executive board meeting to present their demands. The UFT claimed it has a meeting scheduled with the DOE after spring break, but it refused to allow workers into that meeting. Their own union is keeping these workers at arm's length from decisions that affect them most. It's one thing to fight your boss. It's another to fight your union, one said. No, it ain't. That's the same thing.
Right.
The energy that should be going to support school sites is instead spent doing the work that union leaders are already paid to do. The fuck you... But if you had done your job, they wouldn't be here. Though it's been exhausting, yes, their organizing has led to unprecedented events. Never before has a block of workers, accessed en masse, stayed in their positions this long. UFT leaders often claim that new management can manage how they want, but workers are saying they will decide what their fates are. Good for them. They know their work is essential. They know they have community support, and they're ready to keep fighting. And that's my point here today. If you're in fucking New York and you're not like vocal about this right now, and you're not helping those specific people, like, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that like the community's gonna have to come together here. Like, those parents of those kids, you need to be out here.
But it sounds like, thanks to these organizers that they've been doing the work, that families are on board.
Yeah.
With them. So, and that's kind of what I called out my union for over a month ago, like talking to one of the representatives there, is that you're talking among teachers. You already have the buy-in among teachers. You need to have support from parents, and especially my parents, because my parents are rich. Like, and my parents are very connected in DC. One phone call from any one of my parents, that's mainstream media for locally here. You know, like would bring attention to certain issues. You know, but they never do that because in many cases, a lot of these unions are at the hand of these corporations as well. They don't want to fuck up the relationship that they have with them as well.
Yeah.
So, and I think also in the case like in DC, you know, our union, you know, when it came to re-election, our union didn't endorse our mayor. You know, they went with her challenge. So basically right there, you know, like that put, you know, that wasn't good, you know, in terms of that relationship. But, you know, nevertheless, yeah, I just feel for this because this is why I'm in Power Ed. This is why I'm in the group that I'm in right now and I actually was speaking to a couple of teachers on Tuesday about this because they asked me what is different about you guys that is different from the union. And I said, we're not establishment.
Yeah.
That's the main difference. We can do whatever we want and say the fuck we want because we don't have those kind of ties. So, you know, and good on these organizers for actually doing the work. Too bad that our Congress people, Bowman, looking at you, like it's not saying shit about this, you know.
Yeah.
But and this should be
any
this
New
should
York
get a lot more
reps,
attention.
like, yeah, no, I agree.
But yeah.
2 hours later.
2 hours later.
Thank you for playing that story.
Yeah.
Thank you for at least you ended with a somewhat hopeful
good one. Yeah, it's I mean
tonight.
Yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit in that story though, so but anyway.